one of the biggest influencers in Sweden, Therese Lindgren. She had a turnover of 19 million crowns. That's a lot of money. But the profit is 17 million crowns. So that's a 90% margin, which is insane. The big companies, the incumbents, they're looking for 10, 12. If they get 15, it's great. So that's happening. A Chinese company bought SF Bio, which has been owned by Bonnier for decades. And all of a sudden, there's a new player in town. In India, there's been a production called Toyland, which was inspired by probably the government, because they need to install 110 million new toilets in India. Or not new, they haven't been there, so it's the first time. This film was shown on television in India. It was a great hit. And then China said, wait, maybe we should have it. Maybe we should show this movie so that people get inspired and get proper toilets. And so right now, this movie is shown on 12,000 cinemas in China. 12,000. And just think about the number of copies, because they're probably not all digital. And it's a logistical nightmare getting all those out to those 12,000 cinemas. And at the same time, Netflix is disrupting the system. And I was amused when I went to see a movie in a cinema a couple of weeks ago to see that Netflix is actually advertising in the movies, in the salons, for their new series that are coming up. So everything is sort of upside down. And the fact that these young, gifted, and extremely entrepreneurial influencers, and for some reason, I don't know why, but it seems like in Sweden there are more women than men that are influencers. So that's interesting. And so where does that put us? Where does that put us, we that are developing stories, producing stories, and distributing them through traditional and new channels? That was sort of the background to what this seminar was supposed to be about. And so we contacted some good producers with a good track record, but also that are doing stuff right now. So it's not like calling Francis Ford Coppola, who was great 20 years ago. It's people that are doing things now in this environment that we're reading. And you will get to know them more later, because they will be in the panel. First one is Mikael Flodell. Just stand up so people see you. Mikael will present himself later. Annica, Rune. And then we have Erika, Edman. And then we have the pleasure of having Marianne Furevold-Boland here. And she will talk about scam, which for us, when we were sort of planning the seminar, that's the perfect example of new stories for new times. Something that was premiered on the web. And you will tell us all about that development, which is fantastic. My name is Söderström. I've been working with Live Art for I think 5, maybe 6 years. And this is the type of project that I will be involved in. Last year we were doing the startup seminars for the first time, and those are happening right now with a pitch competition in Conservative, right? Yes. Yeah. So you're here, and they're doing something at the other place. Okay. Just an example why I think this place is so fantastic. Last year we had a master class of digital marketing where we invited artists to come and talk about their ambitions and their problems that they had. And one of the participants there was called Julie Neff from Canada, and she has a company called Eclectic Comfort. Julie does living room concerts. She's been going to France, to Germany, in Sweden, Denmark, and so we had this seminar, and then she mailed me 2 months ago just and said, "Hello, Per. I just want to tell you that things are really going great. We've been to Argentina, we've been to Chile, we've been to Germany, Sweden, Norway, and things are really looking up for us. And one of the reasons was that she had talked to a lot of people here about, you know, how should I do it? Should I be on social media? How often should I post? Should I use Instagram? Should I use LinkedIn? What should I use? And so she just took the ball and ran with it. So that is one of the reasons why this is such a fantastic place, that you will meet people that are dedicated and they want to develop something by their own, and which probably the big companies would never put money in, because these people would be doing it by themselves. So that's one of the reasons why, you know, I find really that this the Light of the Heart festival is really great, because people will meet each other, things will happen that would not have happened if they hadn't been. So, I would like to have Marianne Furevold up here. You can, if you want, you can go there, so we have a step. Go. Marianne is producer with NRK, the Nordic Public Television. And you started off as what? Children's TV producer, or?
I probably worked in television for longer than some of you guys have lived, to be honest. But I started out as a TV children presenter. And I have primarily worked in children's television department for in my life, but also done documentaries, producing scripts, etc., etc., etc.
Have a good background. And then all of a sudden, Scam.
And all of a sudden, Scam.
So we would really like to hear that story.
Thank you. Okay, it's great to be here. Some of you have probably already heard me talk about this, and you know Scam. I worked for many years in television, but I have never ever experienced anything like I've done with these 5 girls. It has been amazing, and it's a joy, and I'm really grateful to be here and talk about this adventure. Because hey, what an adventure! Is this Norwegian TV series the future of television? Woo! Who would have thought? When we sat there 4 years ago, and was just going to create this little show. So it is absolutely amazing. And this is not a map over the remakes we're going to make in the world. This is actually a map the fans themselves made in season 4, so they could see at all times where there were other Scandinavians at any time. So they could connect and they could talk about what they just have seen. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? But Scam is not an accidental success. Because Scam is the result of many, many years of exploring and developing the web drama concept. NRK Super, which is the children department in NRK, has been producing these kinds of series for many years. So there's a lot of people that are part of this success. The first web drama was Sara, about a 12-year-old girl and her ups and downs. We had our own website and we posted small clips, diary text, etc. It was kind of a vlog of its days, and we were using the social media channels, platforms that the kids were using at that point. And then came Mia, 3 lead characters, same thing, small films, chats, pictures, etc. And then Jenter, girls. And Jenter has actually been one of NRK's biggest successes, the biggest brands for a younger audience, and maybe that's why everybody doesn't know about it. They won the International Emmy Award this year. So, Scam, as I usually say, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. Okay, but back to Scam. In 2014, we were given this task. Make something that will bring teenagers back to NRK. Thank you very much. Yeah, because, you know, it's not a very easy task. Teenagers, we, as all other public broadcasters, we had lost them to other competitors, such as the internet, YouTube, etc., Netflix. So, how do we make something then to an audience who believes that we have absolutely nothing for them. I think that the most important thing is to take them seriously and try to see them for what they actually are. And to be able to do that, you have to do lots of research. And we were fortunate enough, and thank you NRK, thank you public broadcasters, we were given 4 months to do proper research. We were hanging out at schools, talking to kids in specific environments, social media, a wonderful way, as you know, to learn how people communicate, their humor, etc., and etc. And I think also that this is a part of the success. Because for this audience, I mean, it's so important to give them something that they feel are authentic, especially in this environment that we're seeing today, with so much coming to them. Web, that was our primary platform. We publish something on our own website almost every day. Small films, chats, yeah, social media, etc., etc. And we could be current, which was really important. I took this example when the tragedy struck in Manchester. We were able to send out some love through Sana. And I think it is so important to show the audience that you see them in their contemporary, that we see them in their real life. And we also published in real time, which meant that if there was a scene from Tuesday at school at 5:36, we published that scene on the Tuesday at 5:36. So the audience felt that they were more or less living together with the characters. We used social media. Our main characters had their own profiles. Here are some Instagrams. We posted stuff there who was a part of the storyline, but also random teenage stuff. And I love to show this. Isak, main character in season 3, at that point he had more than 700,000 followers. And this is a fictional character. You know, it is not a real person. But then again, the target audience, you felt that you were living together with the characters. We were publishing content on different kind of channels. And now that this is different now, this was 2015, now there's other platforms that the audience are on. But it was really exciting to explore how to tell a story in all these kinds of different channels. We were being evaluated not the moment, like the nanosecond we published something. They were commenting on the commentary field, and the fans were talking to each other about what they were seeing. And that was wonderful, but also a bit scary, but mostly wonderful. And especially when we saw commentaries like this. This is from 3rd season. Out of the closet, there's a guy calling himself that. He says, he has just seen in season 3 that Isak has told his parents that he's gay. And he says, I'm sitting in my room now, and I wonder if I shall pop into the living room and tell my parents that I'm gay. Scum has opened the closet door, and I'm prepared to go through it. And then they say, do it, heart, 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 heart. If I was your mom, I would have loved you anyway. Oh, it's really nice. And then, how did it go? And to see how the fans, or the audience, the target audience, was using the content in our stories to help each other and discuss it, was just wonderful. So then it's really nice to give something back. This picture was painted by a South Korean girl. She calls herself Eliska, and she posted this in season 3. So for the opening scene with the boys in season 4, it was really great to be able to recreate that scene. To give a shout out to our audience, to implement them in our series, because we are nothing without them. and now the world, not all over the world, but a lot of other countries will get their own scum. And that is really exciting. And I really hope that for the kids in all these countries, scum can give them some valuable tools so they can, you know, confront their own fears and their own challenges. Because it's wonderful for me to travel all around and talk about this and hey, wonderful scum. But with all this hype and all this attention, these are the things that really matters. This was a young girl who wrote to the Norwegian paper, "I'm not a Muslim, nevertheless I feel like Sana. Religious youth in today's Norway need Sana now. Muslims, Christians and Jews. It does not matter what you believe in. We need a character that balances stereotypical Norwegian youth life with the religion." And this is what we should all strive for. To keep making stories that will open up hearts and minds, and hopefully making the world a bit better. I would wish now to conclude my little scum thing, to show the first clip from Sana's season 4, but
we're waiting for somebody to help us with the sound,
yeah.
so we can wait.
But we do that. But hey, thank you. All is love.
Thank you. I know the world has come something better out of scum, I'm certain. What did your bosses say when you wanted to do it this way with NRK TV channel, after all?
Well, the children department, which I think is where the cool people are, I don't know, but they are much braver, not generally speaking, but yeah. I think you're asking about the strategy, the promo strategy. We had a very specific promo strategy, no promo at all whatsoever. We did not want NRK, the mothership, to go out and say, "Hello, we have now this great show for you, 16-year-old girl. Come and watch it on NRK." No. We wanted the target audience to find the show themselves. And I think that also a part of the success, that the audience felt that it was theirs, and that created loyalty and a love for scum. But there are still people in NRK who think that I am a bitch because we didn't want to have a big promo on a Saturday night before Let's Dance or whatever. And I can understand that, because it was not a very traditional way of promoting a show.
So new stories for new times. That's a perfect example. Do we have any questions from the audience?
I mean, it's fantastic. I think the show is great, and I think you managed to. I think the main factor for me when I watched it is that you feel it's authentic, and when you're authentic, you can never go wrong. So I think you really identified the characters and also in their environment. But I'm curious, how is that driven from the start? Was that scripted, or is it spontaneously created?
All the stories and all the characters are based on the research that we did. And Juliana, which is the heart and soul and the diamond in the project, she was the scriptwriter and director. She used that research to create the storylines, so they would feel authentic. And we made this Bible where all this research, all the essence of the research were, and we stick to that for all these years. And when my boss said, "Oh, you can't show this, you can't smoke weed, or you can't do this," oh yes, we have to, because this is the reality of the teenagers. So,
Congratulations.
Yeah.
More questions? Do you have some students here? Yeah, we have a question over there.
Yeah.
I'll be the mic runner.
Yeah, well, because I know you got a lot of reactions from like young people, but what were the reactions from like adults? So like parents or stuff like that. Do you get a lot of like criticism, or what was the response?
They loved it. I remember it came up. there's been actually a lot of fathers coming up to me, and also the other actors, especially Josephine Plesnola, and said, "Thank you. I'm able to understand my teenage daughter better now." So I think it was a glimpse for them to get into the world of their kids. But I must say that we were prepared to, I thought that there was going to be a lot of negative feedback, especially the opening scene in season, when they're smoking weed in the bathroom in the party. And we had the lawyers, and we had all the up onto the head of NRK, we're prepared, and we were like this, we're ready to, when the bad press and everything. Nothing happened. Nothing at all. So I think, it was, grateful it was just positive.
Thank you. More questions?
Anyone else? Yes.
I got a question. Hey, I'm interested. I mean, the whole social media thing is really great that you created all these accounts and everything. But I mean, the work rate must have been huge. I mean, how many people did you have to work just with that? And how much money did it take?
With one person, Marianne, and I don't understand how she survived. I think at one point she had 30 different accounts that she was, like puppet master. And the resources was very small, of course, but we thought about it as an event. When we went into production, because the production cycle was that we were producing while we were publishing. The script was ready 1 to 2 weeks before we were shooting, more or less 2 weeks editing, and then we were publishing it. Sometimes we weren't ready with the final clip until 5 minutes before, so it was very intense, and we were commentary. So we felt like we were going to an event, a 3-month event, and everybody was like, there was not a minute that we were off job. And mine was just amazing.
Just have another question. When you're doing something like this that's scripted, and you say like, this is the future of television. What is the philosophy behind that? Why is it the future of television?
Well, I think that the future of television, I think that what I've learned from this, regardless all the using all the news technology and the social media platforms that we have, is that we humans are quite much alike, regardless gender, age, culture, religion, sexual gender, and we need good stories. That is the future of television. Yeah. Keep on giving good stories.
Good stories.
Was that an answer to your question?
Yeah, I think it was good. Anyone?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Good.
How did you find the actors?
Oh, we had a normal audition. Kind of thing. 1,200 kids were on audition. An ad in newspapers, and of course we went into specific environments, if you can say so. Hang out at schools if we saw someone that we thought could, it was interesting, we asked them to come for audition. And then we just narrowed them down to the best ones, and they're just great.
One of the questions I got when talking about scouting people was that, wow, and it's not even casted, Yes, it is. But so people thought, these were just, people from the street and nothing had been prepared.
Yeah, they thought it was documentary, actually. The first season, there was a lot of people that just thought it was a documentary.
More questions? Yes, Rich, Tella has a question.
Considering the channels you were using, the social media and the marketing and everything, how did you cope with trolling? Obviously there's kids involved and they're quite vulnerable in that.
Interesting question, good question. We were moderating, so on Instagram we couldn't really, go in moderated, but on our website we moderated everything. And we had some rules, as they were not allowed, so we, saying bad things about the actors, saying, hostile things, didn't slip anything through. But I must say that I was so surprised by the small amount, if you can say so, of trolling. it gives me hope for the new generation. I mean, the Norwegian biggest newspaper had to close down their commentary field 3 years ago because of all the hate that was spread by grown-ups, my age. But the kids were like, I can count on 2 hands the times that we had to not publish something. They were arguing, they were discussing, but they were minimal of hatred and trolling. So that was surprisingly good. Positive.
One more question.
Yeah.
I wonder if this would be created from the outside, meaning not having NLK, building it as a project, do you think it would ever be successful to do? I'm just multi-platform use, social media, TV, the whole connection of everything. I just wonder.
No. But yes, again, of course they do. But I think that we were able to do research, and we didn't have like the knife on our throat to regarding numbers and figures and all that things that are out in the outer world. We were allowed to, but saying that now is maybe the time for the so-called commercial world to dare to do things like this.
I have another question. Will you be engaged in the rollout of remakes and other markets, or would you like to go on to the next project?
Were you thinking about the SCAM project?
Yes.
We are very much involved with, to a certain extent,
Yes.
with other countries. They come to Oslo, and we have a little university, we call it, 2 days, when we give them, tell them about the background over, and then I'll go and visit. But I mean, they have to do their own version, and that's what I'm saying. You have to do your own version, and that's the key. And
Could that version be that there are not these characters, they find their own characters and sort of make it from there, or is it sort of not scripted, but that you have certain characters that always are involved in the SCAM production?
Also, some of the productions have emphasized on. We're not spoiling anything, I can't. But maybe they have done some twists because they have been out there, they've been clever, talking to their target audience. They found out like, okay, this is maybe not so. There are other issues we should. Yeah.
That sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So, what are the opportunities that you see that can move movie, TV, internet, moving pictures, productions forward? So,
my name is Mikael Flodell. I'm a writer, director, producer, and I would say also I'm an entrepreneur, because I'm also, been doing. It's always today you have to be business oriented. You have to create, but you have to also have a mind of getting things done. And how do you do that when it's so commercial today? And the media, it's so much out there today. It's almost sometimes that you feel overwhelmed. How am I going to be able to create something that actually people see? Well, SCAM is a fantastic ideal. How do you do that and find your target audience? And I think that's one of the main factors today. Who is your target audience? Who are you writing for? Who are you creating for? Not only do you have to do things today in your own voice, but you have to understand the business model behind the ideas as well. I think that's a very successful area. I've been involved with a movie released recently called Uppsala Kidnapping. I don't know if you ever heard about the kidnapping.
You heard about the kidnapping, Uppsala Kidnapping?
This movie was so, made self-financed with no support from anyone. But the movie became really great. And we got Movies-Film as a distributor to distribute the film, only with 20 cinemas when we released it. But now when we see the results of people going to the cinema, and actually they like the movie, it's almost like a Swedish sort of Fargo. It's a black comedy. But Anders, the director, writer, he's been writing for maybe 15 years and never got his movie done.
Wow.
So he said, I want to do this myself. I'm going to skip the traditional way of doing it. I'm going to do it myself instead. And I helped him actually to get the distribution, and I co-produced it with him. And it's a fantastic journey when you see something being created and also released. We feel today that the cinema going is really hard. and SFD, or like you said, the Chinese, you mentioned that, they only see cash. So even Sture Johansson, the head of SFD, he just resigned, because you see new models today. You see that they want to sell popcorn, but they want to fill seats. So it's even harder for us as producers and directors and filmmakers today. How do you get your movie out there in cinemas? Because the cinema going is quite stable. We talked about that. It's quite stable, but the Swedish movie percentage it's fairly low, between 15 and 20%. We need to raise that number. How do we do that when we don't get the support? Because it's only selling tickets. You have the US movies, you have the big blockbusters, that has a constant flow. So yeah, that was my, I don't know.
And what do you see is like our great opportunity? What do we have to sort of use more to make things happen?
Well, I think one of the big things today is that we see a constant move from distribution models from before, the old school, to direct consumer. And I think this is the main thing. It's like you have the Netflix, you have the Viaplay and Seymour, and all these direct consumer streaming platforms. That's the future, I think, because they want to have direct contact with the clients or the consumers out there. And I think that interaction, I mean, when you see Netflix, you can never interact with Netflix. But I think I'm gonna see, for me, the future will be that you also interact with your audience much more. You have to, because in the end, it's like, you know, Netflix and all these platforms that are just one single channel out to the consumers has to change. It has to be certain interaction. In my mind, that's the future. Yes.
Annica.
Just to add in what Mikael says here, I think the number one thing is passion for storytelling. It's the key to success, I have to say. You have to have a good story, and even though which genre you are spending time with. And it's really, really hard work. It's, are there any script writers in here? I'm really passionate about script writers, and they're doing such an amazing job, but it's also one of the hardest in production, I think.
So do we have a lot of talent? Is that where the future lies? Yes, yes, sounds good.
You told my wrong name. Her name is Annica Bellander Rune. I'm a producer at Jarowski, which is a very big production company in Sweden.
And you have been working with a couple of large, successful productions like?
I produced a man called Uwe, which was a fantastic story and adventure.
Okay, good. Erika.
My name is Erika Edman. I work at Warner Brothers in Stockholm. I've been there for 12 years now. And I guess my claim to fame is 38 episodes of Marianne, which is airing right now on TV4. We've been through a lot of changes during these 10 years, and it's fantastic to feel that after 38 episodes, we can still attract a big audience. And of course, that is a lot to do with the creative, but also that we've been given the opportunity by the book writer to actually write our own stories and not base it on the books anymore. So we've been free to develop characters and plot lines based on what we want to do out of a contemporary point of view, that we can keep ourselves much more current. And I think, unlike you two, who are much more involved, I interpreted it anyway, in the creative work, I am more in the financing and the collaborations with other partners. And I think that's a big difference in the role of producing, is that we producers actually have so much more on our plate now. It's not just creative, it's really finding the money, because 10 years ago we could find a client that would actually pay for the whole production. Now, if we're lucky, we could get maybe 40%, and it's up to us as producers to find the other 60 by collaborations with other broadcasters in other countries, or even companies that will putting too money into showing the cars or whatever, although we try to avoid those sometimes interfering with the story. But we are desperate to find the money because especially if you have a series that have run for 10 years, and you may get a little bit more money from the broadcaster. We also have key talent and all the key people in the team that all ask for more money. So we don't actually have more money for production. It's going to our talent, and they deserve it, but we are struggling. So I think that's a big challenge going forward.
I will say
I actually have another example of I'm producing a TV series right now, or been developing a TV series for almost 5 years now, about Bellander's life. You know Bellander, the Swedish hero during World War II. And we were supported by the Swedish Film Institute and SVT. But last year, the option for SVT went out. And they said, we're not going to prioritize this production. You know, the rights go back to us as producers. So I started thinking about it. How can I make this? You know, because Sweden is pretty close now. You know, for me, and we have the public broadcaster that obviously puts a lot of money into production. It's not there anymore. So I talked to my director, my partner, and I said, okay, I'm gonna walk over to the pond in the U.S. and I'm gonna try to see if we can finance this show in the U.S. It's September now, and we have a deal with the studio in Los Angeles. We have Sony Pictures Global supporting the TV series, and we have Viaplay as a major partner in the Nordic region. So this is right now, it's going to be greenlit in a couple of months, but it's all looking good. And this is one of the examples that you have to be brave to see, okay, this has an international potential. I'm going to look outside my country. I'm going to try to find partners and that believes in the project. And luckily, I find this, it's a new studio in Los Angeles that really wants to do high quality work. And they say the biggest challenge right now is that Apple is entering streaming. You know, Hulu and Amazon and Netflix and all that. I mean, we talk about billions of dollars. But how can you get through? How can you get to these people? So we sent out the screenplay actually to the first episode to 20 different production companies in Los Angeles. And I kid you not, almost everyone said, we want to do this. So I was thrilled to see what kind of response based on the writing. Like you're a screenwriter, if you have a good script, that shines through. If you have a good script and it's something that is compelling, it's something that you can identify yourself with, it's normally you can get through. And then you attach some talent, you package it correctly. There's ways to do it. So I'm hoping, you know, by the time of next year, I will be in Hungary and Sweden shooting this show.
I think one of the things I think about when we have these, like Marianne or the Oscars, they nearly always say, oh, we never thought this was going to happen because we had so much problems with finance or whatever. So the work with making everything happen is enormous, and also having to sort of attack the road, do something else, solve another situation, maybe do it with 2 million less or new distributor or whatever. But if it's good enough, if you want it bad enough, you'll do it somehow. I've worked with this producer for about a year now. Basically, his movie is ready, but it's not really ready yet. So he will be one of those saying, "Oh, I never thought it was going to happen," but he's been sort of at it, and you know, he's going to be.
Well, I think in the time we're living right now with all those new players in our field, we're going to see so much more collaborations. Because everyone is always hunting for a good story to attract a lot of audience. So at Jarowski we managed, as the first company with a TV series called The Restaurant in English, What in the Moon in Swedish, to collaborate with SVT and Viaplay, and that has never happened before. So they are both financing that.
Because we are many that are waiting for the next season.
Yeah.
Me too in Norway as well.
Oh, good. It's coming in October, I think.
Great, great. Yes?
We were talking about the future earlier today, and regarding how you guys are watching our shows, our series, or our films. Because we also, as broadcasters or producers, need to understand that there's a shift in how the audience are consuming our shows. And before we used to say, when you premiered a show on Sunday at 8:30, got 1.2 million viewers. Way, great! On linear television. Now the times have changed, and you have to, it's the player, and you have to say that you can't say it's a success or a failure after a week. You can measure it after 6 months on the player to see if it's total. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's a total change of how we can measure successes or failures, because you guys are watching it, but you won't watch it. And we have to take that into consideration also when we look into the future. That's how changed.
But that also interferes with our traditional business model we have. So that's the really big shift. And I don't think anyone really knows how the business model is going to look like. I think it's going to be a lot of trial and error for many years forward. So.
Yes, going further on that with the business models, I think one of the big challenges is also we were saying how you measure, because I can go for this example, Marianne, that aired last night, there's a challenge in that they don't disclose the figures from Seymour or Netflix or these streaming services. Yet one has to put that into the context that you have to add it all up, because even if we're not allowed to hear the exact numbers, you have to get the total for basis for discussions for the future. But even us as producers, we're not given the figures. I mean, I think it's very frustrating, because I understand you can't go public with it. But for us who work with it, who are struggling to maybe get a next season going, we are not allowed into this secret room where all the new business models are being formulated. And that dialogue between our business and the broadcasters, and I think we need to be more transparent.
Yes, for the whole industry.
Yes.
To learn from mistakes.
Absolutely.
And that's never going to happen.
No. My sort of spontaneous question is there a gala or some other research institute doing like day after interviews? See what did you look at last night and how long and so on?
In NRK we do that, so
yes.
We have very good, and we are learning a lot of the statistics, and I'm using the INES department, we call it, to actually see, how to develop the content that is, so they're very useful. So yes, we are transparent.
Yeah, and I know the distributors are absolutely trying to get hold of numbers and estimate kind of what it looks like, but it's not the exact figures.
But I just want to say it's interesting, because we can now see, when there is a drop, and then when specific scene we can see that okay, that means that maybe we should, do something to learn from it. So it's a very useful toy, if you dare to use it. And dare to look at the so-called failures as well.
You need to be experienced and open-minded to dare to work like that. Because many people say, no, I want to do my story, I want to tell it, and if you don't like it, tough luck. But then if you can balance these things and also keep in mind that you want to do quality, then you can use those figures.
It's so interesting that you say that. We were just saying to you earlier on that my background from NRK Super, where we use this research as a tool, to create content that feels authentic for the audience. That is not like me trying to figure out what a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 16-year-old, feel is real for them. We go out and talk with them. It's as simple as that. Go out and talk with your target audience. And I have had some workshops with scriptwriters and producers that has a more, of course, traditional way of working. And it's very interesting to see how they have to change their the perspective of who are they writing for. Because we have to be valgbare, choosable. We have to be, they have to choose us, and then we have to know what, we have to go for them.
I really agree. I just think it's really important to never lose the focus on great storytelling with a really huge passion. I have a background as PR within PR marketing, and that work is really, you're really working with trying to find out what the audience wants and how to reach them through marketing. So I've had so much, what do you call it? I really can use that in my work as a producer, and when I'm finding new stories and scripts and whatever, I can really feel that this is really actor and cast are gonna like. So, and that's really important.
One of the backsides of the new generation, the new way of watching TV and getting content, I think, is the sort of the red carpet is gone. There's no premieres. Yeah, but I mean, if you release a movie, it's actually something that people comment. It's in the culture pages. There's movie critics that they have to put, it's out there, and it's sort of a drive towards here's the premiere, it's out there, now it's out for the public, and you go to the cinemas or don't go to the cinemas, success or failure. But when you put it out in the streaming service, you're like one of 1,000. It's like, where's the show? And where's the red carpet? And where you're like in oblivion, as a producer, and director, or filmmaker. Because I think that's one of the things that I feel is the biggest drive, is that when you sit in the cinema and you actually feel that what you have done, you get a direct response from the audience. And I think that's the biggest shift. For us filmmakers, I think it's a big thing.
There's another part of the business model also. Erika, you said that one of the things that you lack is sufficient amount of scriptwriters.
Yes, that's, I think, a big problem in Sweden. And it's really based on an anxiety and nervousness from the broadcasters, because I think there are plenty of scriptwriters. And I'm sure there are plenty of good scriptwriters, but there's so many scriptwriters that will not get the chance, because since there's so much competition and the broadcaster needs to be secured in every way, that you have a big name scriptwriter attached to the project. And the ones we have in Sweden, they're booked for years in advance. And when you try to put together a new project and you need to attach these names, and you know that you have good scriptwriters, but they don't have the track record yet. It's like getting that first job or getting that first apartment. You have to have a track record, but if nobody gives you the chance, how are you ever going to get into the business? And I'm really eager for the broadcasters to become braver, to also have more confidence in us as production companies and producers, that we believe in these scriptwriters, and we have to give them a chance. But so many projects are stalled because we can't get those big scriptwriter names attached to the projects because they're busy.
Yes, I remember my former business partner, Marianne Söderström, and we worked with the first season of Söderström. And they done this wonderful sort of short pilot, 3 minutes, and it was just wonderful. And we went around and we tried to find financing, and we got questions like, is Felix Herngren good at doing television? What do you think is going to happen? No, this is new. We don't think it's going to work in the country. It's going to work in Stockholm, but not in Malmö, Göteborg, and the rest of the country. And how wrong we were. But that was a situation where we had he was a fairly established scriptwriter, where it was really difficult to get it going. And then, of course, somebody thought, okay, we'll do it. And that happens. Do you think that there will be more entrepreneurial scriptwriters that will do sort of small jobs themselves and sort of see what happens on the internet, maybe doing a short video series for the internet, and then they will come and say, well, look, I found it, I know how to do it, and not just be a scriptwriter tradition. Do you think that will happen?
Hopefully. I mean, I think that's the positive side of the internet and YouTube is that there are so many producers out there and so many creatives out there. They all have their own YouTube channels. My son has his own YouTube channels. And I'm sure there's some talent coming from there. But also, you were asking probably more about established talent. I think the really good talent, they are so busy working. I don't know if they have, everybody says, oh, I only want to work on my original work, or I'm doing a book, or I'm doing this or that. But yet, then you meet them out in the market, and they are writing things for other people, because that's just the way it is.
I feel like as a representative of the public broadcasters, I don't know how it is in Sweden, but but I totally agree with it. We have to hear more. But I think that we are in progress. Hagelin, which has been one of the big successes at NRK, I think it's been aired in Sweden. On Denmark, it's about a female football coach. It was written, the showrunner, straight out of film school. Producer, also his wife actually, straight out of film school. So we are trying. And Oslo Zoo, that it was being nominated for Creationist now, almost straight out of film school. So we are trying. Yeah, we are aware of it.
Actually, SVT, I understand, they did do some kind of workshop recently, looking for new script writers, but I understood, you probably know more about this, that it was book writers that were invited and actors.
Yeah, SVT has formed a seminar group workshop thing with, I think it's like 20 writers from the traditional book writing and also talent as actresses and actors. But I don't really know what the workshops are going to turn out to be and what they're going to discuss and so on. Because my experience is that script writing is such a hard work, and the more experience you get, the better you get, I think. But there's also definitely, we need to have so much more room for new talents in that area. I'd just like to say something else, and not trying to be too personal around that, but Sweden is a small country, and there is so much room for breaking through in the competition. It usually is like 3 movies that works a year, and I'm not sure if we were able to do like 30 fantastic Swedish movies, I'm not sure we would have the audience anyway. I'm talking on the theaters, theatrical. So it looks the same in the music industry. It's like 3 music artists that breaks through every year, and that hasn't really changed for so many years. So that's quite challenging. And also when it comes to scriptwriters and talents, they are seeing so many.
Do you have a healthy stock, more logger, of stories of sort of in under development? Are there enough sort of ideas of story building that you were working with, do you think?
Well, I have some really good things going on in development right now, I think. And I've also finished a feature film which we are editing right now, who will probably hit the cinemas to Christmas. But I also feel that it's really, really hard to find good scripts. I read so much bad stuff, which is quite depressing. So we all need to work together to find.
Yes, I'm actually doing another project with a book author. We have booked Oscars, so this is also a new thing to 500 seats, and it's also almost sold out the 19th of September, where the author talks about the book, and I'm going to talk about the adaptation to become a film. So this is also sort of a model, okay, how can we get people engaged from the beginning? If the audience out there, how can we, so we already almost, I mean, think about it, 500 seats and it's 250 films, but we almost filled it up, sold out. So it's also trying to find a new model of how can you get the audience. I mean, he already has 100,000 fans on Facebook, So we just went out with an invitation. Do you want to come and listen to the book author about how, and we tie in the movie in the same way, try to get people inspired to support us. So I don't know, but you have to be brave today. You have to be more ballsy to get things done, I think.
Erika, do you think that, Marianne had a second episode of season 9?
No, it was the third episode of 8 that aired last night, and it's season 7. But it's a 10-year jubilee.
And how many viewers?
Last night we had, according to the linear viewing, 875,000, which I'm so thrilled about.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Wow.
Being that it's season 7, but of course the broadcaster says, "Oh, we're satisfied."
But they sent you a cake at least after the first episode.
After the first episode, we did get the million cake, which is it's called a million cake because we reached 1 million viewers. And of course, the first episode, you get a lot of trailering, you get a lot of marketing, so it was also a lot of press, so that was nice. But with that said, if we're going into a season 8, which we hope we will be, we're going to have to find new ways of financing. We're going to have to find new creatives. We've decided that we want to do a new start for Marianne. It's 10 years, and that's going to be a big challenge for us, but we want to make it different. We want people to identify themselves with the universe and the characters, but we think it's a golden opportunity to do something a bit different. So we're very excited.
Is he popular in Germany?
Marianne is extremely popular in Germany, or especially Eva Röse. She has her own fan club. When she arrives to any airport in Germany, she has the red carpet and 2,000 fans waiting for her. Yep.
And was that in the plan? Did you hope that?
Well, we didn't know that, to be honest, when we cast her from the beginning. But of course, I think her fame maybe has risen through Marianne as well. But I've actually had the most comments from Germany. I get letters probably every week about Joachim Nettekist. He had a guest role in one of our episodes. And he has an even bigger fan club in Germany.
So, do you think it would be possible to launch Marianne today if it hadn't been done? Because you've had 10 years, you were very smart in the beginning, because you signed with Eva Röse for a second season, at least, if it was going to happen. So you had it all lined up, and then you were good at the hantverk, what's it called? Like the casting and the craft. So do you think it would be possible to do a new Marianne today with the financial situation, with competition? Would you do it differently when you land, when you come to, so you find these books that you think they have to be filmed somehow?
I think it would be more difficult today. I think we had really good timing with Marianne because we were really the first all-Swedish crime series with a female lead. It was based on very successful books, and we came at a time when TV4 were looking for something like that. But we also had support at that time from the Gotland Film Region, which is sort of surprising, but we don't have that anymore, even though we go there every time to do it. That's a big hole in the budget for us. But of course, Gotland knows we're going to keep coming there because that is our USP for Marianne, is Gotland. So I'm not sure that it would be, of course you can do it today.
Yeah.
That's my answer.
But differently. But somehow what it boils down to is it a good story?
Yes.
And can we sort of develop it?
Right. But I mean, that's the benefit of basing something on books, because you already have an established reader base that gives the broadcaster the incentive to say yes to the project because you have an audience already. Although we left the books now, but we still have the audience.
Annica, you work with drama.
Yes.
Has drama changed? I mean, traditionally I see drama as these great movies where you go to the cinemas. And then now today you have like The Americans, 5 seasons, which is sort of drama. Has drama changed with the times, with the channels and the new way of producing?
Well, of course it has changed in the way that we can consume drama on so many different platforms. And due to that, the competition has risen. It's, the quality is much higher. You need to really deliver on high quality if you're going to compete with, especially the Americans, when it comes to TV series. And that has, on the other hand, made that SVT and TV4, they have to step up, so on. But the competition is really hard, I think. But I think the consumer still, since the human entered Earth, we love storytelling. That's never going to change. But the distribution ways are changing, and they make the competition harder.
So, does the audience have some questions for our producers? Don't be shy. Yes, in there.
I just wanted to ask you about advice for screenwriters, because I have been having a script for like 9 months and sending it out to a lot of producers and agencies and stuff like that, and there's never any reply whatsoever, which is heartbreaking, but I understand it. But like you said, Annica, when you get scripts and you read them and they're bad, where do you get them from, and how do they get to you in that way? And I don't know, I'm just asking like if there's a loophole kind of to get in touch.
Well, it varies. Sometimes someone just sends me an email. Sometimes a colleague comes with a script or a tip from someone who works for a film fund. So it's kind of varies. But I try to read everything I get sent to me, and I try to reply, to be honest. Sometimes I don't have time, but I would say 90%, because I think it's that's my job, and I should reply, because also if I have comments that on the bad script, I want that person to know in a constructive way so they can make better next time.
I think also when you send out script, I mean, the person that receives it, it's going to take at least 2 hours to read this script. You know? So I feel many times, I mean, you're represented by a big large company, whatever represent, but obviously I mean, the business is to produce films. I'm an independent filmmaker, so I try to read everything that I get, but sometimes I see right away when after 15, 20 pages is that this is never going to go anywhere. So sometimes it's like, how do you want to give it a chance? Is this a good screenplay or is it not? Because after that, if you say, yes, I'm interested, it's going to take about 2 to 3 years to make a film like that.
But also to answer your question, the larger production companies and houses, they get sent so much, so there isn't really time to just answer your question, and maybe why you don't get a reply. And also, like in every artistic field, it is working very much with networks and connections, and I know this person who knows this person, so try to get in there.
Yeah,
and struggle your way through.
I just feel like it has to be someone that knows somebody, and it's difficult. Especially at this age also, when you kind of want to try to be at a young age and sort of break through, because I feel like you have to be 30 or 40 to get a job.
I also wanted just to, some advice is to not to send the whole script, because it's very easy to say no when you see the whole script because it's just too much work. But to actually, the first time you contact a production company to just do like a storyline or a short synopsis, so that it's easy to get into the project and actually have an opinion on it. Because, like Annica was saying, you get sent so much materials, and if you send too much, it may be easy to just say, I don't have time to read it. So be short the very first time you contact somebody, and then the next step would be to send your script.
And then when you get depressed, remember the story about Stieg Larsson with his Bellander trilogy. Nobody took it to publish the books. He had 3 books ready in a plastic bag. And in the end, Robert Aschberg, Stig's MTG, called Norstedts and said, you have to read this. And so talking about knowing somebody. And so he sent the stuff in a plastic bag in a taxi to Norstedts. She read it, and then, yeah, because she took the time to read it. So you might be a new Stieg Larsson, even though you don't know. So keep it up. More questions? Yes?
You talked about new players and new competition, and especially in the Swedish industry, there's a new player, Crazy Pictures, in their new movie, Den Lost Kid in Common. What are your thoughts about that?
I can answer that, because I met them 8 years ago. I was in Norrköping pre-screening Himmel och blå av Amazon. And we met these guys on Crazy Pictures when we went out after the screening back some years. And I was so fascinated because they were so full of energy, they were so witty, and I knew they were doing short films on the web. So I've actually followed them, but I've never had the chance to really do something with them. And I'm really full of admiration with their movie that they put up this summer. I haven't seen it yet, but I hear it's fantastic. But that's that kind of collective, which is really interesting, but it's built very much, as far as I know and can see, that it's a collective with friends, and you kind of nourish film 24/7, and then magic can happen.
I think you have, when you see, have you gone into INES page? That film? Yeah. I think the devotion and the sort of what they're sharing with their fans, I think is amazing. I think that they really truly show that they love what they do. And the amount of work that they put down on the film and the trivia. I was actually super interested in someone in there. And they have over 100,000 admissions now in cinema, which is like a zero budget movie. So it's very successful, sold to 70 countries. It's a genre film, and it's designed at times that you can, if you have a team of good filmmakers working together, not as a business model, because I mean obviously they're doing it on their free time, but now we kind of just start becoming a business. It's the next step, but you need that sort of the first break. So they're fine.
That's good.
I have one more piece of advice actually also, and that is if you're approaching big companies, international companies, to think about whether or not the idea can be formatted. Because big companies like Warner Brothers, for instance, they are looking for ideas that can travel, ideas that can be made into several seasons, and ideas like Sam that can go into a lot of different territories. So, I mean, that's one way of making TV drama, but a lot of companies and also broadcasters are looking for projects that can be several seasons, because to put in the amount of money that is needed just for one season and not to be able to build on the brand may be a more difficult decision to make.
And I have an example of exactly what you're saying, because when we went to Furevold-Boland, obviously he got killed by Stalin in 1947, or executed. We know that. So someone said, why can't we have an open ending these things? with Raoul Wallenberg. Well, is that be good in heaven or what? It's like, you know, sometimes it's so bizarre. How can we, then we pitch the idea, well, let's make several biopics of interesting people in the history of time. You know, then you can open up a different sort of model of creating a new biopic series. So that's also, you have to be creative today, because you're going to get stupid questions back. Especially people that want to make money, they want to put $24 million in a series, and they want to see, okay, how can this become, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons? So it's that's the sign of the times, I have to say.
Was it hard to find all the information about Raoul Wallenberg? Because it was so long time ago.
Actually, we got access to a lot of you know, secret, you know, they open up the files basically. Yeah. And interestingly, Göran Persson ordered a book that is this thick of an investigation because they call it the diplomatic failure. Because what happened actually was the Swedish ambassador in Russia. He was excuse me, the French, he was a pussy. And when he met Stalin, he didn't stand up for and so Stalin thought that he was nothing for Sweden. So he wanted to trade. He did trading with the Swiss money against, you know, trading you know, the ones that were aggressive. So he thought that it was, you know, he was not important to Sweden. So, and actually it's funny because a friend of mine, she's the head lawyer of Skatteverket. And I kid you not, 1 month ago, it's the official dödsattest for Raoul Wallenberg just came out officially, that now he's, you know, for sure he's dead, you know, according to the Skatteverket. So it's quite bizarre, you know. But his story is amazing, and I think I have to, I mean, and we need to see that kind of stories that, okay, heroism, one man can make a difference, and one woman can make a difference. I think we need that today. We need to show that, hey, you can do the right things. We need those kind of inspirational stories.
That's great. It's sort of chosen words. It's about the story. When you start telling it, I feel like I want to see more or hear more. Which is like, you go to a movie and it starts rolling, you're like, you're there, you want to be sort of immersed in it. And if it's a good story, then you go home happy and you talk about things. And so this is really important. And then if it's in the cinemas or if it's sort of starting out on the web, it doesn't matter. But we want stories. Okay, thank you very much for your time here. And then we'll take a 5-minute break. And then Tobias is going to ruffle our feathers. Tobias is a speaker that goes around very many places, many countries. And when the organization for the World Economic Forum, Davos, want to rethink a couple of things, they call Tobias, which is, you know, that's pretty heavy. So we're happy to have Tobias here. We work together on a couple of projects, and I really think that, especially you that are studying now, half of you will probably be working with jobs that don't exist today at all. So following a career is so different now, of course, we all know that. But the fact that more than half of you maybe will be working with jobs that don't exist, that's pretty mind-blowing, I think. So, Tobias, your turn.
Thank you. I really enjoyed listening to the former presentations. And this will be on how to actually execute on it. Because we can sit and listen a lot, but it's all about execution. And what I work with today is to execute different types of ideas. I'm a big fan of pushing ideas into reality. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And in order to do that, you really need to understand that storytelling is super important also. And we were talking about how to push ideas from ideas to reality. Then you need to figure out where does all those ideas come from. And there is the fantastic quote. Someone said, ideas comes from curiosity. And it's actually Walt Disney. In order to push things, we need to be much more curious. It's so easy to sit and do what they're used to. We need to investigate, we need to search the market and see, is there a possibility to learn new things? And yes, I can tell you from the beginning, my brain is a little bit like damaged. I love pattern. When I went to university many years ago, I didn't study storytelling. I was like focusing on words. I was analyzing names of different plants in northern Sweden dialects, and I was comparing those words with other words, and I was counting how many are ending with ER, OR, and I created complicated systems. So often when people invite me to, can you do a speak? They say, yes, I can do that. And say, can you send us a picture? Most of the time, I send people this picture. This is me. I love big data. And it has been like that from day one. But big data is fairly useless if you can't connect the dots. So I didn't stay at university because they kicked me out. And eventually I ended up at the museum in Stockholm because they headhunted me. And they asked me, do you want to start working for the Nobel Museum in Stockholm? You can be a curator. I said, I don't think so. Because museum for me, most of them are really, really boring places. And then they told me, well, you haven't been to our museums, you can't turn this work offer down. So I had to go there. I don't know, has anyone been to the Nobel Museum? No, most people haven't. The thing is, what they have pictures of every Nobel laureate, and they called it, and the laureates never winners, Nobel laureates, picture them in the ceiling, and they are going around like in a dry cleaning place. And today, there are 923 Nobel laureates, and I put all of them in my head. But when I went to see that museum for the first time, I saw those pictures and I realized, well, fantastic data, stories, success stories. What happens if you start analyzing each and every of those stories? Can you extract data? So that's what I spent 8 years of my life in doing, extracting data from the Nobel laureates. And this is very, very interesting when it comes to storytelling once again. Because when you speak about the Nobel Prize, it's probably the most prestigious prize in the world. Everyone in the world knows about the Nobel Prize. If you speak to Swedish people, they say, yes, we know about the Nobel Prize. And then you say, what do you know? Well, there's this big party in Stockholm called the Nobel Banquet. And what are people need to know about? Who is going to that party? Who's wearing what kind of dresses, etc. And to tell you the truth, I have not analyzed his dresses. I don't care about the big parties. I don't care about the king. I care about success stories. That's why I put all of the Nobel laureates in my head. Because for me, they are not like 923 old guys receiving like a boring prize. For me, they are success stories on how to think new, but also on how to execute the idea. Because what if you take all this information, what connects all the Nobel laureates? Well, that's actually creativity. And everyone speaks about creativity, and people seldom define what it is. But for me, creativity is the ability to think new and unique, and that's something everyone can do. But that's not enough. You also need to execute an idea, and that's where people get stuck. That's where all the Nobel laureates have succeeded. They have this idea, and they execute it. So if you are a Nobel laureate in literature, you have an idea, let's write the book, and it's a tough work, but they actually did it. They wrote a couple of books, they got nominated, and then they received a Nobel Prize. If you are a Nobel laureate in medicine, you say, let's develop a new kind of drug. And they spend years of doing research, and they develop a drug. That's why the Nobel Prize is interesting, to analyze the stories on how to take those stories from ideas to reality. And one thing that is super important, and that's the only reason why you should visit the Nobel Museum, because when I was working there, I'm not a museum guy, I love words. So what I printed was words on the museum floor. So if you go there, don't watch the exhibitions, they are fairly boring. You should watch the floor, and there are plenty of words printed on the floor. And one of the words I printed is persistency. And why did I put persistency on the floor in the museum? Well, because many Nobel laureates told me, That's the most important skill. And this is really, really important to understand today, especially when we talk about everything is moving so fast. Well, it's not a quick fix. If you want to be successful, it's tough work. You need to be persistent. And if you give up, you will not make it. Once again, that's something that you can learn from the Nobel laureates. There are very good examples, great stories. Like there is this Nobel laureate from Germany, his name is Hagelin. He's a medical doctor, and he thought maybe there is a connection between cancer and a specific type of virus. And he presented this idea. People say, no connection between cancer and virus, because you're stupid. Did you go to med school? Like virus is one thing and the cancer is something else. This guy spent more than 10 years. He didn't get the funding. People were laughing at him every day. When they had this like fika after works, people were making jokes about him. But he went to work, he did hard, tough work, and after 10 years he managed to develop this connection. And today we have something called Gardasil, which we give to young women, and they don't get this kind of cancer. That's a great story. And that's not the only one. There are so many great stories amongst the Nobel laureates on how to execute an idea. And of course, this one is not the solution for everything. It's not enough just to be persistent all the time, but this is an important one. But different skills are important, and different laureates gave me different words. So I didn't only paint the persistency on the floor, I painted so many different words. One of the most important one, which I was not allowed to paint, is actually this one. And this is the key. If you zoom out from the Nobel Prize, I would say this is the most important one if you want to succeed. Collaboration. And it's quite obvious. If you look upon the Nobel Prize and you zoom out and you start counting how many of the prizes are shared prizes, then you realize most of the Nobel Prizes are shared prizes, especially in science. It goes to 2 or 3 researchers. You can't give the Nobel Prize to 4 people according to very old rules. And if you start analyzing those 3 or 2 people, then you realize, well, it's not always like 3 super smart guys in physics. It's often one really smart person in physics working together with someone who's really, really good in chemistry. Or someone who's really, really persistent working with someone who's really, really good in analyzing numbers. What the Nobel laureates has to do is to work in teams with people who are different from themselves. And this sounds very easy, but this is the trick. Because when people are allowed to choose themselves, people will choose to hang around with similar people. I get obsessed. I love crazy people, and most of my friends are also crazy people. But if I want to be successful, I need to hang around with people who are different from myself. So I lack persistency. I get bored within like 4 years. That's why I move on all the time. I would never be a good researcher. But if I want to execute on things, I need to tag to people who are really good in skills that I can't do myself. So collaboration is something that's really, really important. And especially if you want to go into the film industry, I would argue without collaboration, you will not make it. But in order to get collaboration working, and especially to collaborate with people who are different from yourself, you need this one. You need trust. Because when you are pushed into teams, maybe in schools, the teacher tells you should work together, you don't trust each other. And suddenly you end up with someone that you don't like, and oh no, I don't like her or him, and I can't trust him, so let's do everything myself. When we talk about collaboration, it has to be a collaboration built upon trust. If there is no trust, there is no collaboration. Another thing that we should focus on is actually technology. And let's move a little bit away from the Nobel Prize. Yes, I love the Nobel Prize, but I also love technology. I love to analyze complicated things. And this is a fantastic picture. It's showing the progress of internet. I on purpose took something that is quite easy to understand. Everyone knows about the internet. Not everyone knows it was discovered in the 1970s. Not many people used the internet in the 1970s. Most people started using the internet in the 1990s. And in the beginning, and I'm a little bit older than you, it was fairly slow, you couldn't do so much. Then suddenly, people put things on the internet. It could be like music, lyrics, or whatever, and suddenly we needed to sort things out, and you had something called Google, and then they put music on it, and then they put film on it, and today, when we speak about internet, everyone says, everything is going to be connected. And there are even people like Elon Musk, you know, this crazy person, saying that he will put man on Mars in 2024, not many years ahead. And then people say, no, he's a crazy one. I'm not an expert on Elon Musk, I'm quite good on Nobel laureates instead. So when I analyzed last year's Nobel laureates, I saw this. Last year, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry went to 3 people for the improvement of cryo-electronic microscope. This is the resolution of a molecule, and to your left, you have the resolution that the researchers had in 2013. This is the resolution that the researchers had in 2016. The year before that, the Nobel Prize went to the discovery of molecular machines, machines that are 1,000 times smaller than human hair. Today we can build small robots which you inject in your veins, and they track down cancer cells. This sounds like science fiction. This is 20-year-old research. So when you start telling people that they are crazy, you should be a little bit careful, because technology is moving exponentially. And I always try to squeeze in this slide, because I think this is so important. And you don't have to tell them, but I did the presentation for SVT a couple of years ago. I was invited as their keynote speaker. And when you're invited as a keynote speaker, you have to be polite. So I said, yes, this is probably the television industry, and SVT, you are on the top line. Then there are other channels. It could be, for example, Channel 3 or Fox News that are on the bottom. But the problem with the whole of your industry is that you are only interacting with similar people from your own industry. So often you only interact with people that you know from your same company, and maybe you meet once a year at this big gala where you invite people from the same industry. But you never ever invite people who are outside your ecosystem. It could be startup companies, it can be musicians, it can be researchers, because you think, we don't care what they do. But outside our ecosystem, a lot of smart people are working on different things. Here, YouTube was developed. YouTube was not developed within the industry, it was developed outside the industry. And from the beginning, people said, oh, it's low quality, no one wants to watch it. And then suddenly, boom, more people are watching YouTube than traditional TV. And then they told me, well, maybe we should do something with YouTube. I said, too late. How many in this room was like surprised when Donald Trump won the election in the United States a couple of years ago? Most people were. And so were the Democratic politicians in the United States too, because they were only hanging around with similar people. They were not hanging around with the unemployed miners in the United States. This is a way to understand Brexit. This is a way to understand disruption. If we are allowed to choose ourselves, we often hang around with similar people. In order to not be disrupted, we need to do something about it. And this is not just me talking about this, because I have the data. And I prepared a very, very interesting chart for you. Let's see. I was comparing large companies with new companies, and what you see on the top is, for example, BMW. They produce cars, and they were founded in 1916. They have 125,000 employees, and you see the revenue. Then you can compare them with Uber, which was founded in 2009. They have 11,000 employees, and you can also see the money they get. You can compare Marriott hotels with Airbnb. You can compare Walt Disney with 195,000 employees with Facebook that has 25,000 employees. And now it starts to get interesting. Walmart, founded in 1962, 2.3 million employees, compared to Alibaba, founded in 1999 in China, 50,000 employees. Do you see the pattern? Technology is replacing people because technology can do that in certain areas, not in every area, fortunately. Going back to strong storytelling, that's something very unique, that's a creative thing, which is really, really hard to replace with a robot. But there will be a huge competition because there will be so many people out of work. So I think if we are looking for good script writers, there are probably script writers out there, but maybe they didn't go to script writing school. But there are people who have strong stories. And we need to find them, and we need to use technology to tell those stories. Because that's something that human has always wanted. Hear great stories. I live in Stockholm today, and Stockholm and Sweden is a fascinating place when it comes to producing new types of technology, but also new types of companies, and also when it comes to creating films. When I visit other countries, they say, well, this is so strange. Sweden is a small country, and you have this old town, and we like it. You have those old houses, and you have the water, and the trees. And I say, no. The secret sauce is not the old houses and the trees. But the secret sauce for Sweden's success is in this picture. It's not the islands, it's the bridges. Why is Sweden successful compared to other countries? Because we manage to bridge. We bridge academia with companies, with startups. I don't say it's super easy, but it's not impossible to bridge different industries. And that's much easier to do in Sweden compared to, for example, France or Germany, where you're not allowed into the same room if you're not like a double PhD. We don't have the hierarchies. And I think that's a great advantage, especially if you are young. Instead of focusing on saying, oh, it's so hard, I can't get the money, use your time and effort to create those bridges. Realize this is not a solution that you are going to do by yourself. You need to interact with other people. You also need, and this is really, really important today, to do real type of experiments. We don't know how the future will look like. So we need to try out new things. And it's not only about trying, like, let's try something. They did this in Norway, this scam, so we do a copy-paste. You need to try out completely new things. And when you do that, you will probably fail a couple of times. But that's also the charm of technology. It's quite cheap to fail today. When I was the curator at the Nobel Museum, I love stories, and they have this they had this tradition of they wanted to be a little bit creative and out of the box. So instead of having a traditional guest book, they decided on allowing the Nobel laureates to sign underneath the cafeteria chairs. So if you visit the museum, then you turn the chairs upside down and you see all the autographs. And then from the beginning I thought that was a great story. Then eventually I thought that was a really boring one. So when I was responsible for this procedure, one Nobel laureate asked me, am I allowed to write something else? And I said, yes, please go ahead. And I can tell you something, that my director was so furious about this afterwards, I was almost fired. But that's the only way, that's the only key reason for me returning to the museum once a year. Because I don't care about the museum, but I care about stories. And I want to see what kind of stories, what kind of messages did the Nobel laureates leave to us this year. And in December I was there, and Richard Henderson, one of the guys who did this cryo-electronic microscope, he wrote a really important thing. He said, time consists of past, present and future. Of these, future is the most interesting. And I think this is really important learning. Yes, we have past, present and future, and those are depending on each other, but we can sit here and we can talk about the present and we can talk about the past, or we can try to do something about it. And if I would try to do something about it, I would say that this is for me the picture of the past. This is Albert Einstein. Everyone thought that he was like a genius, and probably he was. Everyone thinks that he worked alone. That's a myth. Einstein did not work alone. He was bouncing his ideas towards other people. He was working at the patent office in Switzerland. He got a lot of feedback from his colleagues on his after work time. He went out, he drank coffee and tea. He was meeting people from different industries. He was gathering information. He was asking questions, collecting stories, collecting information. That's how he managed to develop his theories. He was not sitting alone in a room having this spark from God. It's incorrect. So we need to put this genius cult to the past. And that's why I'm so happy that today more and more people and more companies are talking about collaboration. And when I was working for Google in the United States, they gave me this picture because it's a great story. Because do you know what is this? It's a story. The story is that they gathered their staff. They gave them free pizza and sodas, and they worked this hackathon for 36 hours. And what was the end result of this hackathon when people worked together? They developed Gmail. The prototype of Gmail was created when they started working together. And you can't track back that, oh, here we have the genius. They were working together. But the problem with this, and this is my opinion, I'm a strong believer that collaboration is very, very, very important. But in order to get real collaboration, you need trust. And I don't believe most people will trust 2,000 other people. So if I would predict the future, and now you will think I'm super crazy, the future looks like this. These are the Transformer figures. And within the stories of Transformers, there are different types of robots. Some of the robots are called combiners. And they are much interesting because they can form huge robots. Someone becomes the leg, someone is the arm, someone is the torso, someone is the head. In the films, yes, they are not so very good. The head wants to shoot and the hand is crazy. But when they work, you can't beat them. And this is something that I emphasize. I think that we need to find people who share the same vision, the same passion, or maybe the same obsession. And we start forming those guerrilla teams. And we use technology, and we all use old stuff, and we use new stuff, pushing our stories to the world. Because there will be plenty of people out there longing to hear your story. But you are not going to put them into the world with just using old methods. We need to form those combiner teams. Thank you.
So, these new jobs that don't exist yet, are these people supposed to create them?
Yeah, because this is also important. So my major was Scandinavian languages. I'm quite good in Swedish grammar. When I talk about the future for me is not a noun. It doesn't just happen. The future for me is a verb. It's something we do. You can decide to sit there and do nothing and the future will happen. Or you can be part of creating the future. That's your choice. You can sit there and say, oh, people doesn't get me, no one wants to listen to my story. Or you can find solutions to execute your stories. But when you try to do that, I will strongly emphasize, don't try to do it by yourself. Do it with others. Do it in smaller teams of people that you trust.
So, questions for Tobias? Would it be scary?
It's a little bit scary when you look upon the chart and see how many people who are going to be out of work.
I missed, you have left?
I left the museum 3 years ago, and the key reason for that is because I have a defect brain, so I get bored quite easily. So I can only do the same thing for 4 years, then I get bored. And the reason for me working for 8 years at the Nobel Museum was that I first worked for 4 years, and then I wanted to quit, and I had like half a year off when I did another thing. I was working. Similar with storytelling, I was working with the tone of this application called Swish, where you push money into each other. And I was working with the text, the tone of voice of that one. The problem with working with marketing is, yeah, Swish was fun, and then you end up with doing things for Lendo, which is not so fun. So I went back and I did another thing for the museum for 4 years. But then I realized I have everything I need. I need to move away.
So where are you now?
So I created I think that the future also lies in those small mobile units. So I decided, let's create one of those units. So what I work with today, I do 3 things. I do 5 keynote presentations a month, and at least one of them has to be abroad, and I do that for collecting data. Then I take that data and I put that data into 4 or 5 different projects where I work together with others. And we execute the ideas. And this creates a learning experience. So I get information by doing lectures, but I also get information by executing things together with others. And hopefully, I can do this for longer than 4 years. Otherwise, that would be a little bit complicated. But I try not to target things that are longer than 4 years, because I'm not the provider. I can help you to build things. Then I give it to you and you do whatever you want to with it. You need to find people who can push it for longer.
Otherwise you can come to the film industry, because a feature film takes around 4 years.
Yeah.
And then you switch to another story. But I think you're absolutely right, and very similar to the making movies is collaboration. It's not, I used to say thinking is something, doing is everything, because you really have to execute, and you have to collaborate with so many people. So.
And I did a presentation in Istanbul, and it was great, he was a great film director, and he was standing on stage and he was saying, oh, I'm like Bach, I'm super smart, I'm a genius, but no one gets my films. And I was sitting in an audience because I said, oh, so there are so few people in the world who are truly creative and gifted. Most of them are so stupid, and I thought, well, maybe it's you who are really stupid, because it's not about just having this great idea, this picture in your head about this film. You need to execute it. And if you can't do it, especially if he was trying to do it by himself, he will fail. And I would argue that a person like that is not a creative person.
Absolutely.
So in your mind, what is the golden formula for execution and being successful?
I think the golden formula is to realize that ideas are quite easy to get. There are so many ideas out there, and if you want to do something, you need to get information, data, like the scam. Let's gather the information. What are the kids really talking about? Gather the information. And when you start talking about ideas, people think, well, someone will steal my idea. Well, it doesn't matter, because there are so many ideas out there, so you shouldn't be afraid about talking about your ideas. The tricky part will be the execution part. And where people get stuck is the thing, this idea about, let's do it by myself. That will never happen, or very seldom. Focus on creating those smaller units of trust. And another thing, instead of like deciding to have this grand idea, let's solve the world's starvation or create this this 10-year big picture thing. Break it down to smaller pieces. Break it down to smaller pieces and build it brick by brick, almost like building Lego blocks. If you start working in that methodology, it will help. But of course, keep remember the persistency. If you think it's going to be super easy, it's not super easy, but it's not impossible.
More questions?
I want to give an example because I was hired to do films for, actually funny enough, the Bellander Stiftelsen, the Bellander Foundation. And it's pretty fascinating. I was directing and meeting 12 different scientists in Germany and in Sweden that has a direct connection with the Bellander Foundation. And the main thing, I was asking them, where do you get your inspiration from?
Yeah.
And they said, curiosity, exactly what you're saying. It's the driving force behind and fundamental science.
And that's the good one, because people are talking about AI and things like that, and people are so dead scared. I can say good luck to teach a computer curiosity. That's going to be tough. Computers would be great in like legal stuff, or playing chess, or playing the game of Go. But to teach one to be curious, that's really, really complicated. Not for us as humans, but for machines. So we should take advantage of that. Always be curious.
What is your reaction if you come out to Volvo or you come out to SKF or SG? Do they become defensive? Do they think that, wow, of course, great, let's move on? Or do you get a lot of resistance?
Often people say this is quite thought-provoking, but then they start saying, well, we agree with you, but then what I tend to see is that people, they don't have the persistency to put this to action, because they realize to change the old model to this new model is going to be super tough. And people still think, let's keep the old model for a couple of extra years and then we retire. So I strongly believe that many companies will completely disappear. It's almost like this fantastic person who never received the Nobel Prize, Hawkins. He was saying that intelligence is the ability to adapt. Those people who doesn't have the ability to adapt, those companies or those areas who doesn't adapt, will die.
May I ask you, have you looked into what happens, like you were mentioning SE? I know that SE they've moved from working in closed offices to open workplaces.
Yeah.
What happens to companies when people are actually forced to get out of their comfort zone and work together in big workplaces and collaborate?
Yeah.
I mean, does that?
I think that today many companies try to squeeze in people into those more modern offices, but what you really need to understand, we are all different. So there will not be like one model fits all. So we need, and that's also something that's really good with the technology, that yes, we shouldn't, it used to be that people sitting alone in a room and now they're sitting together. We need to have a combination of those. And some people, they really want to sit alone for a while and they need it. Once again, I believe everyone can be creative. But I also believe that most people, when they're allowed to choose themselves, will not choose creativity because that's too hard. So in order to make people more creative, they need some kind of push or some kind of help. And that's something you can help with pushing them, for example, saying, yes, you are allowed to sit in your room for like alone for 2 weeks, but you need to come out and have coffee or meet this person. You need to bring people with different perspectives together. That's why I love the whole idea about this festival, bringing all the music together with the film, with the art, the entrepreneurs. We need more places like that. This level people can interact and create those teams of people who are a little bit different, but they share the same goal, the same passion to execute on the idea. This is like a golden opportunity for you to connect with people. And someone was asking me, oh, I need the contacts to push my manuscript. use the time today to speak to people and see if someone knows someone, because it's not rocket science. And I don't say it's super easy, but it's not impossible. There are a lot of smart people here in this room and outside this room. Use them to execute your ideas. And don't be scared of technology. Technology is fun. Do experiments. I put the microchip in my hand a couple of years ago just for fun. So I have my keys in my hand. When I traveled here from Stockholm with SJ, I have my train ticket in my hand. I give high five to conductor. The ticket was automatically transformed to his cell phone. I had this great conversation to the passenger beside me, which eventually turned out to be the headmaster of Furevold-Boland Högskola. And suddenly we had this big conversation, this big story, this discussion. So play with technology.
And Tobias is humble, so he won't say that he was actually the guy that got SC to start that service. SC came up to Epicenter and they invited us to sort of, let's talk to you and what we do together and tell us what happened.
Yeah, and I told them, well, I traveled with you like a month ago and I saw that you were using cell phones to scan the tickets. Why don't you open up for like people who has like a shipping plant to have their tickets? And I said, well, are you crazy? And then they went back and had this big discussion, and then they called me and said, yeah, we're going to execute on it. And once again, I don't care about who's executing IDs. I care about the IDs being executed. Going back to the Nobel Prize, the idea with Nobel Prize is for the benefit of mankind. It's not about winning a prize, it's about creating a better world. And if you compare the world today with the world in 1901, the world today is a much better place due to the fact that people are creative. And once again, it's not about winning Nobel Prize, but it's about executing ideas. And if you really have a strong story that you want to tell, you need to execute it. You need to put that story out there.
Are you going to be the new Rune?
No, I don't think so. Because the thing is that Rune was a brilliant person, and I'm a little bit stupid and I have this brain defect. But what I think is so important to take away this myth about that, no, you didn't get accepted to this type of school, so now you will never be able to do your own film. It's not about that. Of course, it sometimes helps to have the right connections, going to the right schools, but that's just half side of the coin. The other side is tough work, and if you work together with people, you can actually do it if you want to. That's the message.
Thank you for that inspiration. Yes. There's a part of chaos theory in this. Butterfly starts flying somewhere, and then there's a wind that builds, and something else happens further along. What happened here with SC was that all of a sudden there are these Japanese TV teams that are coming to Sweden to do news flashes about Swedish railroad operator SJ, who have the tickets in the chips of people's hands. And so I think they've had about 4 or 5 international TV teams coming to sort of do this. And that was not in the stars. It didn't do it because to do that, but it shows that this little thing has probably given them more PR than anything they could do with the PR agency.
What else do you have in that chip?
I have some bitcoins, of course, just to play with. I have the keys to the office. I have my business card. I have all my vaccination charts. I have a keynote presentation, because if I manage to lose my computer, I can always access the keynote presentation in my hand. Silly stuff.
How much storage is it?
Well, so far it's fairly small, but I compare it about storytelling. I remember when my father and mother bought our first home computer We were actually living here in Örebro. It's 1982. I was like 8 years old. I was so thrilled. Oh, a computer. Maybe there would be games. There were no games on that computer. It was a big calculator and a type. Yeah, it was so boring. But when people started buying those computers, it opens up for everything else. And from the beginning, there were not too many people injecting the microchip. But today, I think there are more than 10,000 people in Sweden who have done that. The story has spread across the world. It's going to be like this, almost like a global community of people. And when people realize there are like thousands of people out there, it opens up for new types of technology. So for example, when they are launching Apple Pay for real, you can put your credit card in your hand and then you pay with your hand when you buy a beer. That would be fantastic. A perfect opening story and conversation piece.
And it's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now,